Hey, welcome to another episode of Footnotes. And today we're talking to Dr. Jack Neal, who's the co-founder and CEO of Hank A.I. Jack has a lot of things that are interesting in his life, but one of them is he went to medical school, was a practicing physician, and then decided to become an entrepreneur. We also talk about his company, Hank A.I, and what they're doing to help solve a lot of problems in healthcare that you don't necessarily see when you're visiting your doctor. But then we get into probably the more interesting part of the conversation, where we cover things like the need for coaching, swimming upstream, and about self-branding. In other words, the being known for knowing stuff. And I love the way that Jack kind of has put these things together in his business career. And I think you're going to get a lot from this. Check it out. Jack, thanks for joining us on Footnotes. We're here with Dr. Jack Neal, who's the founder and CEO of Hank A.I. And you guys are, sort of in the medical technology space. And I'll just let you kind of just take it from there. So what is Hank A.I?
Yeah, so we're super, technology is super nerdy. So I won't get into the too deep in the nitty gritty of it. But in the top level, we're focused on reducing occupational screen time and putting the interactions back in, people's lives at work and other places. So in healthcare, it's obvious when your provider never looks you in the eye. There's a whole bunch of reasons why they're clicking buttons, and it starts with a lot of the financial part underneath. So we're focused initially on automating and augmenting as much as we can underneath, such that we can put the eye contact back in healthcare.
So is this necessarily like part of the patient experience when they're with their care provider, or this is kind of more of the back?
It's the back end, yeah. It's underneath the healthcare system, so it's not patient facing.
Okay. So what about that sort of needed to be fixed, or more exactly, what are you guys addressing on that?
So, the cost of healthcare, the main issues with healthcare, I think in this country at least, is cost is number one. Number two is quality and other things. And a lot of the cost is redundant, repetitive, administrative tasks, just inefficient things. So really focusing on that first is where our technologies kind of are being applied. Mm-hmm. And our technologies, we say they organize, automate, and accelerate the customers we work with. So they organize their data, they automate processes based off of it, and then they allow in different industries and others to accelerate the care provided or accelerate the business that we're working with. So we're not just in healthcare, but that's where we started and where most of our focus is on sales right now. But we've actually got large pilots with places outside of that using our data extraction technology and platform.
So before you're an entrepreneur, you're actually a medical doctor. It's not a PhD, you have an MD.
Correct.
What was it like to transition from sort of the world of medicine that I think most people would think, hey, it's a good, stable, source of employment. You can make a lot of money depending on kind of how that's set up. Why sort of leave what a lot of people sort of dream about to go into something that sometimes just produces nonstop nightmares?
Yeah, well, yeah, running a company is harder than I thought it would be. Well, like building a product is what I love. So, I was a computer information systems undergrad first. I was a tech guy, programming my whole life. And, medicine just came after the dot-com bubble busted. And I couldn't get a job at 19 in 2003 doing IT. So I decided to go into medicine. My plan was to be a pediatrician, move back home, have a nice, stable job. But definitely my mind wasn't cut out for that. So then it kind of shifted once I got into medical school, which by the grace of God, somehow that happened. The whole time I was programming and developing things, and healthcare is so broken from the infrastructure and the technology and interoperability, and the fact that your provider spends 2/3 of their time clicking buttons. There's so much opportunity there to improve the technology that it actually is just a perfect fit to kind of innovate in that space. And so I'm just doing what I love, by making products that solve things that stink about healthcare.
Yeah,
primarily.
And so how long have you been at Hank A.I? How long has that been in existence?
So 3 years. We started in 2019. We started with kind of an idea around a technology and then tried to figure out where to apply it. So it really was around a new way to do reinforcement learning, a lot of, again, nerdy stuff. And then we figured out where to apply it in revenue cycles first. And so that was on a flight back from AI Med in London, and I spec'd out the whole stack, and then we raised some money and got started.
So you took an airplane ride, or on an airplane ride home, sort of back of the napkin, you just spec'd out what Hank A.I was going to become.
Notebook, but yeah.
Okay,
similar.
notebook.
Yeah, it was in a notebook. But
How much does your company now resemble what was in that notebook?
meh. I mean, the tech, what I've had to learn is the sales side of running a business. I'm more of naturally, I'm the product side. I'm like, build the cool thing, make an excellent product, solve a big problem. And then like, who's going to pay for it, how are they going to pay for it, and how are you going to scale it is sort of, something that I'm still learning to this day.
Was that a surprise for you as an entrepreneur to, you kind of naturally think about this product and making it great and something people want. But what about sort of selling the company, if you will? What was...
God, yeah, I've always, it's always like, hey, if you solve a big problem, they will come, right? But it's not, typically, and I think what I've learned is that your tech doesn't sell. Right? It's how you sell your tech. So like you can make the best widget, you can make the best technology, the most advanced algorithms, whatever. And that's all cool, but it's not going to sell itself. And it's not even going to differentiate you really. It's how you work on relationships, how you're going to apply that back into human in the loop in this space when you're doing augmented stuff. How do you put a human back with it? Because it's never automated. It's always augmented, automate 20% and the person does some. So I think that human-centered design, I didn't appreciate how important the non-technical aspects of sales were until we started selling, and you realize, tech doesn't sell itself really ever.
Well, and maybe this fits into where we are in the conversation, but I know in sort of our conversation before this to set this interview up, there were a couple of things that you mentioned that I want to get into, and so I think we've got a way to get into one of those now. But you talked about learning about self-branding. Does self-branding sort of play a role in what you were talking about, kind of that non-technical aspect of selling a product?
I think it does, yeah. I mean, we still don't have, we have relationships with business dev people, but we don't have on our payroll a full-time business dev or salesperson. We kind of take that on our executive levels through our network and relationships. And it's why, in the current environment of raising capital, and you look at like how effective you are at your customer acquisition costs compared to the lifetime value of the customers. I mean, ours is 24, which was crazy high. It just means that it probably means it's not a good thing, right? It's like a company paying a 20% dividend. It's actually a bad thing. It means they're not investing in growth. Ours means we need to hire more salespeople, right? But to get there, to get going, you can either burn cash up front or you can build relationships and work. And that helps for multiple things, including, investments, right? If you're starting, you need angel investors. I mean, how are you going to make that happen? It's going to be the decades of, or maybe hopefully not decades, but years of relationships you've built and all the, the footwork you've done, going to local meetings, going to regional meetings, just talking to people. And so I think that's very important. And then if you can get yourself into positions where you're known for knowing things, where you're a speaker or you're an educator, maybe not in academia, but just, and have a platform, whether it's Twitter, LinkedIn, or an in-person type of speaking, you start to have your own personal brand, which helps a lot whenever you're starting into the sales process.
That's interesting, the way you put it about being known for knowing things. How did you begin that process?
I talk a lot. I mean, that's probably mostly it. But no, I mean, I just, I like people. I like talking to people. I like, conversations. I just enjoy that. It's something that, I guess some people might not, but I do. And so it works out well. End up having a pretty wide network of people I know all over the place because of it. So just be scrappy and just always don't be scared to talk to anybody. Talk to anybody you can about what you're doing, what they're doing. Just, you never know where it goes. You have no agenda. Just meet people, talk to people.
How do you said don't be afraid to talk to anyone. Were you always that way? I mean, has that always been the case for you, where it was just more natural to just go up to someone and start talking about Hank A.I?
Well, yeah, professionally, yeah. With girls, it was never. I was scared, I was always scared. Like, I'm happily married, a beautiful, lovely angel wife, so it's nothing to do with that. But somebody introduced us, I think, because I was too scared. But in business, yeah, I have no fear. I feel like if I talk to a CEO of a company, they can be huge, and if they don't like me, like what we're doing, that's fine. They're not the right fit, and there'll be a new CEO there in a couple of years, and then it's not like one and done. I think that was always my issue with girls. It's like, she was the one, maybe she was it, and now it'll never happen. Whereas like with business, it's not the same. It's more like that's a rotating door there. That business, there's more businesses. Like, I don't know. I'm not scared at all.
Yeah.
I have no fear of rejection in that.
Well, that probably fits with capital providers. I mean, it's not just sort of selling your product, but potential investors,
right.
Speaking engagements, all kinds of stuff.
It hurts. I mean, it still hurts when people, especially if you get your hopes up. So I try to never, don't get your hopes up. Don't put your eggs in one basket. Even if you've got a best friend who promised you capital or whatever it was, like just, appreciate that. Keep working your thing, right? Don't say, oh, I'm betting that, John's gonna invest in, if he's giving us the money we need to get started, and then he gets a little squirmish on it, and then you're screwed, right? Don't do that. So constantly be working that. That's something that I always do. And if they tell you no, ask for their friends, right? So if they say, we're not the right fit, we only do Series A or whatever it is, say, okay, well, can you introduce me to 3 people who might be a good fit, right? And always get something out of it.
Okay, so I was gonna say, how many people, that sounds like one of those things that someone would say. It's like, hey, I get rejected and I ask for 3 more opportunities. But have you found that people are generally willing to do that?
I'd say at least half the time, yeah.
Okay.
And it hurts nothing to ask. They're not going to remember you as any crappier of a person for having asked, so you might as well.
Right.
It's well, and y'all can edit this out if I can't say this, but my brother-in-law runs a big tech company, and he always said, you as the founder of an early company, you're the ugly dude approaching a pretty girl at a bar, right? And how do you get a pretty girl at a bar, right? It's not like how you dress or what you say. Sure, you should try to do all that stuff great, but really it's in the law of numbers, right? You need to talk to a lot of pretty girls, and one you're gonna win, right? And if she doesn't, say, do you have any friends who might like me, right? And it's the same thing with venture when you're going after capital. Take that same approach. Don't be scared to ask, because the number of times you ask is completely related to how often you're gonna get a yes.
Okay, so along those lines, and we also talked about this, and you've sort of hinted around at this, but swimming upstream was a theme that we talked about in that conversation, and even kind of going back to something you said earlier about, hey, I graduated school, I just decided to go to medical school, and maybe it was sort of a place to hide out, but it also gave you opportunity for employment.
Mm-hmm.
But then you went against the grain and became an entrepreneur. What does swimming upstream mean to you, and how has that been just important in your career?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to explain it is it kind of started with my dad, right? I think so much is rooted in how you were raised. Some of it's genetic and some of it's raising, and it's why I believe that help the more we can do to young, in that prime time of life, in the high school time, that's when people are the most impressionable around what they're going to end up doing. You have these moments, and I just remember my dad one day we're playing ping pong, and he whooped my tail every time we played, beat me, and I was always like, let me win. And he said, no, because the day you beat me is the day you need a new ping pong partner. And so it was basically, once you've gotten where you're going, once you're the best at something, are you gonna sit there or are you gonna keep going, right? And it's always keep going, right? Always find a new challenge, never be done. And so I think for me, that's sort of the swimming upstream model. It's never settle in, right? There's more to be done. There's more work to be done. There's more to be accomplished, Once you've reached somewhere, we're next. Keep growing personally and professionally. Same thing with the company, keep growing. Just never get comfortable. If you're comfortable, you're losing the race. 100% of the time, no one's run a marathon and been comfortable. Mm-hmm. So if you're trying to win something, it's got to be uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So keep pushing. So I don't know. It's a long-winded answer to a simple question, but
yeah, and I think that we're in this world of content and media, and people sort of get interviewed for doing great things, and you guys have done some really cool stuff, but I think it's said a lot about be comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think sometimes people listen to that think that's easier. That's just something that people say. It's just kind of one of these almost like a throwaway thing. And again, this is kind of a cynical viewpoint, mm-hmm. but I mean, I don't know. It's 2022. There's a lot of cynicism mm-hmm. out there. It's kind of our national export, it seems like. But can you get it? I don't want to say talk to that person, who needs that encouragement, but talk to that person that's kind of listening right now and is thinking it's just something people say. I mean, how has that really benefited you?
Yeah, I think if, everybody, might not be the best way to answer this, but everybody can't be a billionaire. If everybody's a billionaire, then everything's more expensive and nobody's a billionaire, right? You've got to be unique, right? You have to do something other people aren't doing, or you're not going to be worth anything more than what everybody is. And so if that's your goal, then that needs to be plenty of people's goals, right? Is to be comfortable and, but if you're driven, if you're trying to grow a company or grow professionally or a relationship, whatever you're trying to grow in and as a person, I think you have to realize that if you're comfortable, you're gonna settle in with the masses. And that's fine probably for certain things. Never be fine for me. That's why I'm weird. But I think you have to be uncomfortable if you're gonna get ahead. You're gonna have to push harder than most if you're gonna get ahead. Otherwise, you're just, walking the race with everybody else. And that might be fine. But if that's not where you want to end up, that's where you're going to end up if you don't push.
Another thing that we talked about, and again, you're doing a great job, by the way, of setting these things up. So you're pushing, you're not settling for sort of that common experience or sort of that sort of what everyone else is doing, if you will, or, oh, Jack, you've already done so much, like, why don't you just kind of coast for a while and enjoy it? You talked about coaching, specifically like an external person, or maybe even a group of people at times, but that are working with you, that know you, that understand you, and are maybe providing some of that external challenge. It seems like you've got some determination on your own, some ambition that, like you said, was maybe part of that nurturing process of growing up. But you were telling me you're seeking that out from other people through coaching. Why? What have you gotten from that? How did you find a coach? What made you think you needed one in the first place?
Yeah, I think, one of the most self-aware thing, I don't know how this happened, but the self-awareness to know you can't be self-aware without someone else, right? Like it's almost impossible to be, because you have to tell yourself things every day to keep yourself up. You have to look in the mirror and say, I'm the best at my job. I'm the smartest, whatever words you need to use to make yourself go. But you have to do that for yourself, but it's not really true, right? And so if you do that to keep yourself going, you kind of need something else out there that makes sure you're paying attention to reality. Now, I still want to live this world of think I'm the smartest person in every room, I'm the most confident, all those. I want to live that because that makes me scared of nothing, right? But I have to be humble too, or else I'm just a jerk, right? So I think that was a big part of why I know there's an issue. There's an issue if I just stay in this confident spot, and I need the speaker of truth spot. And it really happened, I listened to a bunch of Audible books because I can't really read, so I can read, but I can't pay attention. So I listen to Audible while I run or do other things. And the $1 Trillion Coach about Bill Campbell.
Yeah.
And that's sort of, as I read that book.
That's a great book, by the way. If you're listening to this, you haven't read $1 Trillion Coach.
Amazing. And the only problem is then you'll want a Bill Campbell, and Bill Campbell's not alive anymore, so you'll be sad. But it was actually, I think it's Jay Bigelow up in North Carolina, the CED, Council on Economic Development. One day he reached out and said, how can we help you? I was living in North Carolina at the time. And I just told him, I said, I need a Bill Campbell. I need a Bill Campbell. I need that guy who speaks truth to me, who keeps that humble side, keeps that self-awareness and forces me to maintain some reality in my sort of channel vision of where we're going. And so he introduced me to a guy up in North Carolina who, had run a couple public companies, and been working with him for, 2.5 years now. So, it sounds like there's no magic to it, right? It's really just, we speak every other week and just talk about whatever's troubling me or hard, or he asks tough questions, and it just, it helps me tremendously to have that.
What about, someone's listening to this and they say, I've got a couple of good friends that keep me humble. They keep me grounded. They keep me, connected to something that's kind of outside of what I'm doing. Would you say that's the same thing, or these coaches that you pursued, are they different than sort of that close group of friends?
Yeah. Those people love you, and that's a problem. So,
okay, why is that a problem?
It's great. That's why they're your friends. But it's a problem because they're your friends, right? And to have truly an agnostic friend who, is going to speak truth to you even though it hurts. We all think our friends do that, and we might have friends who do it in certain situations. But are they going to tell you, you know what? That's a stupid idea. Starting that company is a stupid idea. Hiring that person, they're going to more want to know what you think and then kind of support you. It's just natural. So,
Sure.
Again, it's not a rule of thumb. You might have a person, but in general, I have lots of good friends that I talk stuff out with, but it's different, right? They're my support network, not my, Jack, you're an idiot network. And I need that network.
Do the coaches that you interact with, is it always where they're pointing out negatives?
I ask them to.
Okay.
I do ask for, and I seek out people who are not yes men or women, because, if you surround yourself with too much of that, I'm a confident, headstrong person. We'll run all together face first off a cliff, right? So I need people that'll be like, that's a cliff. Maybe we want to slow down a little, and, I need that know people in my life. So I intentionally seek that out, even though it kind of sucks at times, but it's needed to counterbalance the aggressive forward thinking.
What are now that you've experienced this, and clearly it seems like you've benefited from it personally, and that kind of spreads out into other areas of your life, but what are those attributes of a good coach? If someone's thinking about okay, I'm hearing this guy talk about it, I've been thinking about it myself, I want to start taking some action. What would you say that a person should look for in a coach?
Yeah, it's tough because I think the number one thing you need is someone you can have a relationship with that, not a friend type, but one that you trust, respect, all those things, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a little bit, sometimes the same person, you might not hit it off. So there's a little of that.
Would you say that they need to have some experience that you would like to get? Or is that all?
So for me, and I just think this could be different for other people. For me, I want someone who has experienced something similar to me, that when they say something, it's not coming from, I read some books and I know stuff. It's literally, I lived that, right?
Gotcha.
I know what it's like to have a 4-year-old in my house and be starting a company, or those types of things, right? Somebody that can associate with me, because what I'm looking for anytime it's a coach or, times I've talked to performance psychiatrists and stuff, but I'm always looking to be led. It's like a preacher. Right? You try to find a church where the preacher leads you. You don't try to say, I wonder if they read that Bible verse or interpreting right. No, I want to be just led in those situations. I want to let down all of my thinking and all of my normal Jack stuff, and I just want to be led. Mm-hmm. And so finding that, I think sometimes it takes a minute to find that person that you feel led by, that you trust, that I don't need to dissect every word they say. If they say, Jack, you need to spend more time at home, I don't be like, well, but no, I'm just, okay, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, that's the most important part in the coach, is that I don't try to dissect their words, that I just let them lead me, which is, just might take some trial and error.
That's really interesting, because I think a lot of people that might be listening to this are probably similar to you or interested in similar things, and that aspect of being led seems so counter to almost the entrepreneurial experience. It's like, no, I'm the leader. I'm the one making decisions. I know best. I'm smart. I'm capable. I'm ready. I'm the fundraiser. I.
Right.
But it seems like in this case, you've experienced sort of the backseat
right
part of it, or being a passenger.
It's sort of a release almost, right? You can't control, if you try to control everything in your life, especially as you get busier and busier, or you're running something larger and larger, it's exhausting. And so anything in life that I can relinquish, right? As I learn to delegate things and not micromanage things and control everything, trying to find ways to relinquish certain things and be led, I think, is just a very relaxing, it's good to keep you up from losing your mind a little bit.
Do you encourage, throughout your organization, do you encourage other members of your team to seek out coaching? Is that something that you think about, or is that kind of more right now where for you and where you're at?
Yeah, I think right now it's more for me. We do have sort of a psychologist that we sort of have on staff that people could talk to. I don't get involved. I don't actually know how much people use her or not, but there is such a person that we can use. It's paid for to use when people need to. So yeah, I'm not sure on the utilization of that at the moment, but I think it just depends on the person and where you are and how stressed you are and how much is on your shoulders. And so if anybody ever asked me, I'd help, but currently, I think I'm probably the only person in our company.
Okay. Well, Jack, we've covered a lot of ground. Thank you for sitting down with us and talking about these things. Where can people find you online or find your company online?
Twitter, Elon's Twitter. Twitter, LinkedIn, not on Facebook because that's for the devil. Mostly that, or go to our website and my email's on there.
And your website is
Hank.ai.
Hank.ai. Okay. Well, hey, thanks for sitting down and sharing some of this stuff, especially, the things you were talking about, swimming upstream and being challenged by a coach. I think that's something that a lot of people maybe sense, but it's not really talked about. It's just about, hey, how successful are you? How amazing are you? How seemingly easy were these things? But I think you've helped kind of pull some of the cover off of that maybe it's not sort of what it's cracked up to be. We all know that to be true, but it's just, it's not the most fun to talk about.
And stick with it. I think my sort of the most important thing, if you've got an idea, is the longer you stick with it, the more committed you are to it. First, it helps you with your commitment level to this idea. I would highly recommend people not raise capital until you are quite committed to the idea, because me, I have terrible ADD, so I have a million ideas, right? So I've had projects, many different things I've produced over the years, but this was the first time we went for capital because this was the one. So if you're an idea person like me, typically who writes code and does stuff, isn't this cool? Stick with, when you find the one, stick with it, work it, believe in it, ask a bunch of people, right? Yeah, but that stick-to-itedness, that grit is going to be what, investors are looking for. It's what employees are looking for when you go to hire. It's incredibly important to, stick with it once you've got the idea.
You mean it's not the slick slide presentation they're looking for?
No. And if you come back every 4 months to an investor, a friend, or someone with a different idea that you're thinking about starting, at some point you've lost all credibility that you're ever going to actually do anything. So be careful. I speak that personally because I'm that guy if I'm not careful.
It sounds like we need another conversation at some point on how do you know when it's the one, idea edition, or something.
I don't know that answer, but
right.
You just know.
Well, thanks again for sitting down with us, and I just wish you much success.
Thanks, John.